Though only a couple of 100 yards away, the island was completely invisible in the thick fog. In pea soup like this, you don't take any chances on steering for the open sea. For some reason, I expected to wade ashore through a mud flat. But no, the waters around Mud Island were crystal clear. Our bow scraped over beach rocks, and we entered another world. An eerie place, hauntingly beautiful in the mist. The Mud Islands spring back to life briefly at lobster fishing time and when fishermen farmers such as Arnold Dion and Leroy d'Entremont come here to tend their sheep. While they work at the fencing, Val Peterson sets up the generator. He's a professional sheep shearer from Prince Edward Island. The annual trip to the Mud Islands for Val and his wife Becky has become a bit of a tradition. Trained in animal husbandry, she pitches in to give Val and the sheep farmers a hand. They're all used to this. In a half an hour or so, the equipment is all set up and the finishing touches put to the corral. It's just a temporary fence. They have to go through this ritual 2 or 3 times a year. The rest of the year, the sheep are on their own. And now it's time for the roundup. This is a job for Leroy, for Leroy and his 2 bilingual dogs, Grout and Pup. Off in the fog they stride and scamper, leaving the rest of us to hide and wait in ambush. We didn't want to spook the approaching sheep, so we kept as inconspicuous as possible. In fact, Becky was so quiet and blended into the background so well that a crazy little bird decided to pitch on her head. And wasn't too fussy about leaving either. Meanwhile, out in the fog, Leroy, Grout and Pup were doing their thing.
Come by, Grout, come by. Come by. Down, Grout, down. Get back now. Get back. Basically, they're trained to fetch the sheep. They're like a retriever. They go around the sheep and they want to bring them to me. That's their instinct. Then you work on that and getting them to go one side or the other, and you have one command for one side and another one for the other side. That's basic commands, right and left, and then you have a walk-up command. You walk towards the sheep. And then down command, that's your basic commands. And it's good when they work good, and it's frustrating when they don't.
Your dogs speak 2 languages, I believe.
No, they only speak 1 language. It's half French and half English. Not quite the same. Down, Pop! Down, Grout! Back. Down, Grout. Push it, Pop. Push it. Down, Pop! Come by, Grout. Come by. Down, Grout. Come by. Down!
When the sheep were safely in position, we all came out of hiding and to help herd the flock into the pen. If the sheep seem a bit wild, it's understandable, for they see humans only a few times a year. Well, soon the flock was neatly funneled inside the pen, the spring's crop of youngsters and their woolly mothers. And the work began. Val is one of a handful of professional sheep shearers in this part of the country. On a good day, he'll strip the wool from 300 sheep. In a year, he'll shear 7,000 or 8,000. The shorn sheep are passed on to Leroy, who treats the animals for external and internal parasites and checks to see what sort of shape they're in. Val's daughter, Amber, carefully records all the information.
So it's 90, 33, the ram.
Now they get everything all straightened up, set up over here.
An amazing amount of wool rolled away from the clippers as Val quickly removed the animals' heavy winter overcoats.
Maybe you could tell me what you're doing, Arnold.
Dave, this is a little ram lamb. We're going to dock his tail and castrate him with these little bands, and that'll keep him clean and keep him from being too aggressive in the fall and chasing the ewes. And what we do, we treat them for we vaccinate them, and that'll keep them from getting pulpy kidney if they get on green grass and lockjaw. And there's 7 different things that it takes care of. And this is for internal parasite.
You just squirt that down the throat?
Yeah, it's an oral drench. And this one here is for external parasite, sheepheads and lice. And we haven't seen this year any ticks or lice, so it's doing a good job. So just a simple procedure of putting it on, and there he is. Come on, little fella.
Becky, you've seen a lot of sheep all over the Maritimes. Are these...
Oh, these are rugged little sheep. These are, actually, I shouldn't say little, because as you see, most of those yos there are good and big, good, big, healthy sheep for being out here all year round.
Becky and Val have been taking their children, Amber and Seth, out to the islands for years. It's a trip the entire family looks forward to, a mixture of adventure, work, and fun.
The kids are out of school now after the end of June, and my wife's not working anywhere right now, so we all come together and we go into Yarmouth for a day, and we stay on an island for a couple of days, and we make it a bit of a holiday as well as work a bit, so it can be fun.
Finally, it's all over. The flock is set free. Looking a bit forlorn and naked now without their heavy woolen coats, they clatter away over the beach rocks and into the mists of Mud Island. It's the last contact they'll have with humans till late in the fall. Thank heavens. Now to make off with the loot. Wool isn't the main product of the sheep industry. Lamb meat is more valuable by far. Yet there's a lot of wool on some of those big sheep, up to 10 or 12 pounds. And at 90 cents a pound, it adds up. Arnold and Leroy and the other fishermen farmers keep carefully selecting and moving rams and ewes from island to island for breeding purposes. And now it's time to go. One advantage in keeping sheep on islands is that you don't have to worry about predators. No coyote will ever make it out here. We're 13 miles offshore. Well, it's time to head back to the boat and move on to another of the Mud Islands. The wool is tossed aboard. One more island to go. But all hands work with barely a break. You never know when wind and weather can foul up an expedition to the Mud Islands. But on a day like this, it was hard to believe we were on the open ocean. Yes, everything was working with military precision. We steamed along, ready for the next invasion. One final target, the last of the Mud Islands, there for the taking. It would be a surprise assault. We eased away from the vessel. Uh-oh, the hills have eyes. We advanced closer and closer. The scouts watched, hesitant, uncertain, till there was no question of our intent. We reached the beachhead. The troops tumbled out, a fearsome sight. The opposing forces began an immediate but orderly retreat. Grout, Pup, and Leroy advanced fearlessly, while the rest of us made up the rear guard. In no time at all, Leroy and company had command of the high ground.
Down, Pup.
We watched as Leroy and the dogs rounded up the sheep and herded them toward the pen.
Get back, Grout. Face it.
The dogs kept the sheep moving in a wide circle around the perimeter of the island, eventually channeling them along a rocky beach. We had them now, nowhere to go but into the hastily assembled corral, built for shearing and to give the flock a quick medical.
Down, Grout. Grout, get back, get back. Down, soft.
After all day shearing, Val Peterson was clearly thrilled with the condition of the sheep here on the Mud Islands.
You can see for yourself there's no external parasites. The condition of them, they have a lot of body fat. The wool's healthy. You can usually tell the sheep if it's healthy or not by the wool. And you see by the wool we get off of them that they are indeed healthy. It's remarkable, you know. We tell people we come out here and half the people will say, what do the animal rights people have to think? What do they have to say about sheep out there not being fed grain and hay all winter? And they say, you have to come and see them. Like, they're incredibly good shape, healthy, vigorous. Can't beat them. There's a lot of mainland sheep that aren't as good as these ones.
It's a rich wild pasture out here for sure. Lots of grass in the summer, and in winter, well, incredible as it may seem, as soon as this grass withers in the fall, the sheep move to the landwash, the beaches, where they feed on kelp, washed ashore in storms. There's lots of it, and it's all they eat, till the grass sprouts again in the spring.
So half the year it's grass, all this lush grass that's around, and the other half it's seaweed.
That's it. That's it. After October, at the end of October, they'll pretty well, this is their main diet.
That's amazing.
And you'll see they'll pick at it, and they'll just pick at whatever they want, there's an abundance of it here on the shore. They just keep grazing at it and picking at it.
Free roaming sheep, feeding on wild grasses in summer and on storm-tossed kelp salad in winter. An old tradition that survives here in southernmost Nova Scotia. It's a far different island we're on now, and a far different way of raising sheep. We're in Valleyfield, near Montague, in Prince Edward Island, and this is the farm of John and Carol McLeod. With over 200 breeding ewes, it's the biggest sheep farm left on the island. Not bad for a nutritionist who simply married into a farm and got hooked.
Well, this farm that we're on now has been in my husband's family for 150 years, and he wanted to move out here. We got the sheep because it's a small animal and something that hopefully I could manage because I'd never been on a farm. And it's a nice, easy animal to work with.
Carol keeps up to date with the latest scientific information. She practices intensive management. In order to have a steady supply of meat for the market, she induces her flock to lamb 5 times a year, a real break with tradition.
Traditionally, lambs were born in the spring and marketed in late summer, early fall. And there's still people around that think that they have to get lamb at that time of the year. But more and more people, I think, are seeing the light that in order to make a go of it in sheep production, lambing at different times of the year is a big key to success.
At a time when most were easing out of sheep production, Carol and a handful of other producers began to eye the blossoming craft and tourism industries as an outlet for their wool. They had to try something. The market for lamb meat wasn't at all encouraging.
We started at the farmer's market about 14 years ago. I remember Saturdays when I'd go and hardly sell anything. I certainly couldn't pay my gas for driving to Charlottetown. But now it's become a very important part of our marketing system. With the meat, we sell it by the carcass or side, but also I take in cuts of meat to sell on speculation. And also now, after many years, many of my customers know to order cuts ahead so that they'll get what they want the next week. And the customers appreciate that one-on-one communication with them. And one of the reasons we do like to sell our lamb here on the island rather than shipping it off to the easy way off to a market in Nova Scotia or elsewhere is that we want the pelts back. We take care to make sure the pelts are clean, they don't have burrs in them, they don't have livestock markers on them, they don't have bugs in them. We take care because we take the pelts back from the slaughterhouse and we tan them.
And you have a craft store to go along with your operation?
Yes, we were quite fortunate a number of years ago to be able to purchase this little shop that it was the old community hall, and it's really fun meeting the visitors in the summertime in our little shop. I have someone there to help me as well in the summertime, and because I basically manage the farm.
As you'd expect, Carol's craft shop specializes in woolen wares. Mindy shows people around and answers their questions about the woolen products on display and the techniques employed in making them.
What are some of the uses that you use for the wool?
Well, we sell a lot of them for baby skins and rocking chairs. In front of fireplaces is a big one. And another interesting use that we use them for is on motorcycles. We can go out and we'll fit them, we'll cut them, you know, to fit your motorcycle perfectly. That's really popular, actually.
Yeah.
This one here,
For years, synthetics threatened to put woolens out of business. Not anymore. There's been quite a worldwide swing back to natural products. And what can be more natural than wool? To see how raw wool from the sheep is converted to yarn and blankets, we traveled to McCausland's woolen mill in Bloomfield, on the opposite end of Prince Edward Island. For generations, the McCauslands have been tumbling washed wool in at one end of the mill and tending the ancient machines as they magically transform the wool into yarn and blankets. Thousands of tiny teeth card the wool, straightening out the tangled fibers. Rollers and belts and pulleys swing into action as the wool is carried along, bending and twisting in a seemingly unending path. It's an amazing thing to see, but the process has been going on for a long, long time. Canada was a very young country when the first wool was carded and spun at McCausland's. The equipment has handled a lot of wool. After carding, the wool must be spun. This part of the process seems to take a bit more tender, loving care, but it's still skillfully designed machines that make it happen. It's fascinating to watch the ancient equipment at work. Cold steel, hundreds of moving parts, cogs and wheels and pulleys and teeth and rollers, somehow gently transforming this incredibly soft material. Depending on the demand, the yarn is twisted into 2, 3, or 4 ply. And so, wool from sheep becomes yarn for knitters. It's shipped back to thousands of customers all over the Atlantic provinces. There's a good demand for woolen blankets too these days. Alan McCausland keeps an eye on the loom.
It's a noisy old brute, but it's very effective. And maintenance on all this equipment must be terrific. There's so many...
It can be by times. If something goes wrong, one thing will lead to another, and you have to be able to pick it out. If you don't, you can really get into problems.
On a good day, the loom can turn out 30 blankets. They're cut and hemmed upstairs, the final stage in the fine art of making a virgin wool blanket. And so the woolen industry survives. Not like it was some years ago, when thousands of sheep roamed the Maritimes and kept many woolen mills humming. But it's still a tidy little industry, an industry that relies on the public's fondness for the warmth and comfort of traditional materials. But it's not all traditional. There are new products too, new markets to be tapped. Sheep farming, the production of lamb and wool. There are still those who believe in the old industry and who are determined to keep it alive.
Probably been sheep on these islands right around here probably for 150 years or more. And you know, we're just carrying on the tradition and trying to get a better breed and trying to get a sort of a purer sheep. And they do well.
Where's that?
That's it for sheep farming in the Maritimes. Next week, watch for soundings and the behind-the-scenes story of the Linverge campaign. The week after, we're back with the sled dogs of Labrador. Come on! In Western Labrador, dog teams have taken off. More and more people are choosing sled dogs over snowmobiles.
After you takes a ride, then you'll understand how it is that anybody could love a dog team.
It's puppy appeal, and it's catching on.
Straight on.
The Sled Dogs of Labrador, 2 weeks from now on Land and Sea.
Straight on, sweetheart. That's the girl. That's the boy.